Welcome everyone to a new episode of RippleLIVE. I'm here in my little quarantine space, and Mark's in his quarantine space. And we're doing episode 24 of RippleLIVE, and we're glad that you can all join us this morning. We have a really great show for you today. For those of you who took the time to fill out our survey to send us questions, Mark and I have gone through them, and we're planning on going through as many of the questions as we can given the time allotted. And by the way, how long are we going to go today, Mark? I guess we haven't talked about that. So sometimes it's in flux depending on how many questions we get or what have you. But we'll just go. Usually we go to about an hour to an hour and a half, somewhere in there. And anyway, so this is a show. Well, Mark will tell you about the format of the show. That's what.
Sure. So welcome. If you're new, just a couple tips. This show's for you. It's about answering your questions about Final Cut Pro Motion, Compressor, and related applications, and production, post-production in general. You can post questions here. We did ask people to submit questions before, as Steve mentioned. We've got some demos set up to answer those questions. We'll start with those, but feel free to post questions here. We'll do our best to answer all of them. If you really want to get your questions seen, you can click the little $sign there and make a nominal contribution, and that will pin your question and make it big and show up. And that also helps support the show. We greatly appreciate that. I think that's about it. So greetings from Holland, Arizona, Finland, Tulsa. We got people from all over the place. Fantastic. And I think we're just going to dive right in and start answering some of the questions that were posted earlier. And Steve's going to go first with that. And then if you post other questions here, we'll address those as well. So welcome, and let's get going.
So a couple of things. Another way that you can support the show is we have a couple of tutorials on sale right now. And they're really ridiculously low price right now. We have this one tutorial called Music Editing in Final Cut and GarageBand, and it shows you how to arrange music, how it works with Final Cut. This is normally like a $59 tutorial or $69. It's like $10. And then we also have this other tutorial that Mark created called Warp Speed Effects. So if you want to know everything about working with effects in Final Cut, this tutorial is also only $10. And again, it's regularly like $59. So I wanted to commend these two tutorials to you because they are pretty cheap, and it's a way to support the show. All right, so I have my spreadsheet open, and we're going to just go through the list, and we'll answer them one at a time. And again, like Mark said, if you have a specific question while you're watching, just feel free to post it. All right, let's looking at the top here. Multicam. So this question says, "Hi Steve and Mark, is there a way to apply selected effects to a set of clips in my timeline or multicam clip angle at once? For example, I have a multicam clip, and one of my angles contains audio tracks from the same lav mic. And I have a preset for that mic with EQ and compressor. Is there a way to select all the clips from that angle and apply my preset to all of them at once, not individually?" Yes, there is. And so this is what we're talking about, or what he's referring to. So here I have this timeline of the lovely iJustine, and it's a multicam clip, and it's of course edited down into A and B cameras here. And the question was, I don't want to apply my effects to each of these clips individually. Well, you don't have to. All you need to do is double click and go inside the angle editor where you can expose the angles, as you can see here. And then I'll go into my audio effects. Now, it could be a custom audio effect, or it can be any of the preset ones. It really doesn't matter. Point is, whatever audio effect you're going to use, you just apply it to that angle. In this case, A angle or B angle. So when I apply it to the A angle and make my adjustments, you can already see the waveform adjusted slightly after I did that. When I jump back to the parent project, you'll notice that, well, you won't notice it because it's an audio effect. Every time I'm on the A angle, that compressor will be applied to it. So there's nothing I need to do more than that. It's just apply the compressor inside the multi-clip container to that angle. And so that's my answer to that question. All right, Mark, your turn, buddy.
Hey there. So a couple things. So I'm going to answer the first question, but I just thought I'd show you guys. We've redid our setup a little bit.
Yeah.
So we both have ATEM Minis. Steve's got an ATEM Mini Pro. I've got the ATEM Mini that he sent me after he got the Pro. And I also improved my internet speed drastically by switching to fiber and doing a hardwired connection, which actually makes, between the internet speed and the ATEM Mini, I can now communicate 1080p instead of 720, which I was doing before, which is awesome. And I'll show you guys a quick picture. You can see right here of my setup now. So I've got the ATEM Mini below my LG screen. I've got my GH5S camera is what you're watching me on when you watch it. And then I've got the blue mic here. I'm not using this Logitech camera. That's just for like, Zoom stuff. And I've got a couple lights. Are you not seeing it?
Oh, we can.
Okay, great. So all I need to do to switch is, you can see this little 1 in the ATEM switcher. If I press, it's actually 2 now. If I press 1, it goes back, and now I can talk to you guys directly. I can switch 2 and switch to my screen. So it makes it super easy to do. So with that said, I'm going to switch back to me just for a minute, because I'm going to read off the question that I want to answer. Is one of the first ones we had asked. It was I've been trying with no avail to figure out how to achieve a time-related effect back and forth at different speeds, just like dragging manually and randomly with a cursor over a clip. So how do you do that? One thing is you can drag over the clip and record that, but Motion actually has a behavior that lets you do that. So I wanted to show you how you can do that in Motion. So here I am in Motion, and I have this clip of Abba Shapiro, our good friend and Final Cut trainer extraordinaire, driving up in this little Miata. Some of you might recognize this from the color correction tutorial. But if I want to create an effect of the cursor kind of jumping around like this, what I can do is, with that clip selected, I'll go to Behaviors and choose Retiming, and I'm going to use the Scrub behavior. And the Scrub has a frame offset. And you can set keyframes, but rather than setting keyframes for that, I'm going to click here and add a parameter behavior called Randomize to randomize that frame offset.
Hey, so Mark, I want to interrupt you for a sec.
Yes.
I think there's an inset of me, a little picture of me over the UI.
Oh, let me there.
There you go.
That
there
should
we
be
go.
gone now.
Yeah.
Don't want to look at Steve right now.
Right.
So now that I've added that randomized parameter behavior, you can see it's animating that frame offset to have this jumpy look, and I can increase the amount of that. And I can also say, hey, instead of offsetting from the current frame, offset from the first frame. So you've got really a lot of control over kind of the jumpiness, how much jumpiness, the frequency of it. I can drop that down. I can increase the noisiness of it. So you can have a lot of fun doing kind of a random jumping around on a clip by doing this in Motion. And again, that's with the Scrub behavior, and I've animated the frame offset with a randomized parameter behavior. Now you might say, hey, I want to publish this and use it in Final Cut, and you can't. Let me switch back to myself. Unfortunately, these retiming behaviors won't work in Final Cut when you publish them. You can try, but maybe you'll find a way to do it. I have not found a way to make it work, but it works great in Motion. So that's one way to achieve that result.
All right. Thanks, Mark, for that. Let's move on to the next one. All right. So I'm looking at the next question. It has to do with interlaced footage. The question was, what would be an optimum workflow for converting Final Cut video from 1080i interlaced to progressive? Well, before we jump into Final Cut, let's just quickly define what we mean by interlaced. Well, not too long ago, when we were dealing with cathode ray tube television sets and literally broadcasting, video needed to be split into, a video frame needed to be split into two separate frames. And they would be timed, odd, even, which would be called interlaced. And that interlaced footage was how things were broadcast for, literally decades until computers and then progressively shot video. But we still have a lot of that interlaced footage still out there that we need to marry with some of the progressive footage, or sometimes we need to want to convert the interlaced to progressive. As a matter of fact, here's my general rule. if you know you have you always want to conform to the format you know you're going to be delivering to. So you know you're going to be delivering to 24p, that interlaced footage needs to be conformed to 24p. If you're delivering to 60p, the interlaced footage needs to be converted to that. So you always want to think about what you're delivering to before you decide how you want to conform your interlaced footage. And so let's look at Final Cut, how it deals with interlaced footage. It's actually pretty simple, but there's a little feature inside Final Cut that maybe some of you aren't aware of. So I'm going to jump into Final Cut, and I have this sequence, this little animation that Mark provided for me from the Bioneers conference. And just looking at it, you're not sure if it's interlaced or not. I mean, if I just play it, what's the nice thing about interlaced, because it happens so two fields every it's 2 fields a frame every 30 frames a second. You just don't see it. It's just all blended. It's the persistence of vision phenomenon. But it can cause problems when you cut it in with other progressive stuff. So if I go to the view menu up here, and well, first of all, I would recommend you go in, you zoom in to like, I don't know, something like 100%. I'm going to go to 200% here. And then under the view menu, notice it says show both fields. If you have this checked and you pan around, I don't know if you can see it, but there's like this little, it looks like little honeycomb. Let's see, I'm trying to find it good, like this flower right here. If I look at this flower, it looks like there's a little comb going over the top of it. That
Steve,
yes.
If you scrub forward to where a little further along, where there's a more white background, I think it'll be more obvious where where that logo's animating, somewhere in there maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I saw it pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, look, there you go. There you go. There it is. Perfect. You're right, Mark. Look at that. You can totally see the interlacing artifacts. But notice you have to be zoomed in at 100% or greater in order to see that, and you have to have show both fields turned on. Okay, so how do you deal with this conform-wise? So I'm just going to take this clip, which I know is interlaced, right-click on it, choose New Project, and I'm going to force it into a 1080p HD project. And let's say that most of this interlaced could either be 2398, it could be 2997, it could be 5994. I'm just going to assume it's 2398, and I really want it to conform to 24p. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to click OK, and open up this project. And now I've placed the same clip into a progressive sequence. Now, if I go over here to that area where we would normally see the interlacing, notice the interlacing artifacts aren't there, because what Final Cut did is it threw away either the odd or the even, depending on which field was dominant, and that's a whole other discussion. But basically, Final Cut did an auto detect. It was smart about figuring out which fields should be removed and then throwing them all away. So what you end up with is a interlaced clip that has been conformed to a progressive project. Now, if I had like 6 or 7 clips interlaced, I would probably export these out using the share menu and then bring them back and then put them into the progressive timeline. I mean, you could conceivably take these interlaced clips and just drop them right into your progressive timeline, and Final Cut will do the same thing. It'll conform it. It'll throw away those excess fields, and you should be fine. I just tend to want to have all of my clips conformed. So my workflow would be I would spit these out as a ProRes file and bring it back, so I know that clip is conformed to progressive. So that would be my workflow. On to you, Mark.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
So, just the next question we have here, is it possible, this is a motion-related question, is it possible to create an object along a motion path and then use Replicate to have other objects follow behind? And the example this person brought up, and so I went into the names here, a locomotive pulls one train car along a motion path, and then you want to have more cars following that locomotive. And he says it'd be nice if it could make the cars different colors. So the answer is yes, you can do that. And what I'll do is I'll switch to my screen here, and you can see here's an example where I've done it, where I have this train coming in and going along a little motion path with a bunch of cars following it. And the cool thing about this is if you take that motion path, you can change it. It's like a live thing, so I can choose edit points. If I could see, there's my path, and I choose edit points. Sorry, it keeps selecting something else, so I'll just use the tool here, edit points. And I can change the points along that path, and everything will then adopt to that new path. So it can be done. It's a little bit tricky to do both of these together, so I'm just going to show you briefly a way to do that. So here I have a train and I have a train car, and these are just downloaded from Google, so I can't really, share the project because I just grabbed them. But what I'm going to do, I'll turn off the train car for a minute, and I'm just going to add a path real quickly. I'm just going to draw some Bezier points here, hit return, and then I don't want this shape to have anything. I don't want to fill or an outline. But then I'm going to take the train and add a behavior, basic motion, motion path, and then for the motion path type, I'll set it to geometry, which basically means a shape, and I'll drag the shape I just drew into this well. And right away, the train moves along that shape. I need to do one more thing, behaviors, basic motion, snap alignment to motion, and now that train moves right along that shape, and you can change the shape and it will adjust as you saw. So that's the train, but what about the train cars? So I'm going to turn the train off for a minute. So I can replicate those train cars. I'll click the replicate button, and then in the inspector for the shape, I'll choose geometry, just like we talked about before, geometry, and I'll drag my shape into that well. And that makes copies of that car along that same path. To make them align, there's an align angle checkbox right here. I don't know if zooming works here, but I'll try it. So there's a align angle checkbox, and I'll click that, and that aligns them. They're upside down by default, but we just changed it.
Mark, you know that Zoom works now. You can use your Zoom.
So that worked when I did that?
Yeah, it did.
Great. Okay, so I'm zoomed in. So now I turned them 180 degrees, so they flip the right, and I'll add more points. And now I have this series of cars along here. So how do I animate them? Well, because it's a replicator, you can't use the motion path behavior. So this is what you might think you could do. Oh, I'll replicate these and use a motion path behavior. It's not going to work. You need to set the shape to geometry, and then you animate this offset. So if I drag on the offset field here, you can see how they move along here. Now, another problem about this, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to press Shift-V, which shows the full view area, so you can see off the screen a little bit. When I drag on that offset, it's an infinite number of cars, okay? So how do you basically combine the train here with those cars? And that takes a little bit more work. So rather than do it all here, I'll just show you what I did in this example here. Is I basically set the timing of the replicator offset to match the timing of the train, so they moved at the same speed. Made sure they're both set to constant without any easing. And then I added a mask to hide, and I'll zoom out a little bit, the extra cars, okay? Because if I didn't have that mask on, I'll turn it off here, you'll see the extra cars. So you do need a little bit of masking in order to get this to work correctly. But you can do it by combining a replicator and a motion path behavior. And, oops, that's that.
Awesome. All right. This is great. We're just moving from one tip to the other.
Rock and roll.
All right. Yeah. Just remind everyone that, if you do have a question, you can post it in the chat. And, we're trying to answer pre-show questions that we receive via our Google link, and then also the ones that you post in here. So since we have any questions, I don't see any, I was looking, I didn't see any specific questions. Actually, I've been answering a lot of the questions right in the chat with regard to things that we've been showing. So it's great to see you guys. So I'm just going to keep moving on to the next tip. We'll just keep going through until we see a question that you want until you want to put a question in. All right. So the question, these are short questions that I can answer really quickly, and one of them has to do with Apple Music. Okay, so the question was, I have Apple Music subscription. I try to download music into my video, and unless I've purchased it, it will not download. Why is this? Especially iTunes said my subscription gives me unlimited access to music. Well, that's true. Apple Music does give you unlimited access, but it doesn't give you unlimited download. So there's actually two problems. One is Apple and their digital rights management, and a lot of times you won't even be able to use, even if you own the music you've downloaded, you paid for it, and you've downloaded it, a lot of times you won't even be able to use it in Final Cut because of what are called sync rights. Apple's preventing you from doing that because, after all, Final Cut is a pro application, and the assumption is you're going to use it to make money, and you're off of the backs of somebody else's intellectual property. So there's two things. One is you're not going to be able to just download anything from iTunes unless, of course, you pay for it. And two is the sync rights issue. All right. Another question was, what is the latest version of Final Cut Pro, and can I update mine, or do I have to buy a new one? Here's a great thing about Final Cut. Any version that you purchased, you could have purchased one 9 years ago, on June 2011 when it came out. Every update since then, and I don't even know, Mark, if you know how many updates there's been, every one has been free since then. Yeah. So wherever you're at in the Final Cut Pro continuum, download continuum, you can upgrade, and it's free. Caveat: make sure that your system, your OS, and your system supports that particular version of Final Cut, because at some point, some versions of Final Cut they stop working beyond a certain OS, right? So, do you have anything to say on that, Mark? Or?
No, I think you covered that. I mean, the big thing is, of course, moving to Catalina. Yeah, is the big thing you need to be careful of. Or you're going to need to do eventually. Yeah. But it's somewhere you're going to need to go and get ready for. And you might have an older machine that can't do it, and you're just going to be. That's where you're going to be for a little while. Yeah, and speaking of OS, I have not been. I'll be the first one. I have not been happy with Catalina. It's been a nightmare, particularly because we use a Synology server, and we store all of our libraries up there. And ever since I believe it was, let's see what version, just so you know, ever since version 10.15.3, and that was the demarcation line for me. 10.15.2 has been fine, but everything since 10.15.3 has been literally a nightmare. I have not been able to run libraries off my NFS server, and I'm still trying to get to the bottom of it. The Final Cut just gives me this warning all the time that says, your media's, what is it? I forget what the warning dial is. It just doesn't see the media, even though the media is there. Anyway. Long story short, I don't want to bore you with that, but I've had a lot of problems with it. I'm still trying. I'm hoping that Big Sur will deal with this, but it's been a struggle for the past few months. So all that to say, whenever there's a major OS update, you always want to proceed with caution, especially you don't want to upgrade in the middle of a mission-critical project because that could be bad. Anyway, all right. So let's move on to there's another question I can answer very quickly regarding Timelapse. This, in a nutshell, this gentleman was capturing a series of still images for Timelapse on his, I don't know what camera it was. It had to be in Canon because it was CR2. Canon's a CR2 is a Canon RAW format, CR2. So he's capturing JPEG and CR2 files. So what was happening is he'd bring in the CR2 sequence into Motion and try to output, and then Motion would just crash every time. Well, there's two problems. One is there's no point in bringing a CR2 file into Motion. Motion doesn't know what to do with Canon's metadata. You can't do anything in terms of adjusting the raw image data. So you're wasting your time bringing it into Motion, for one thing. Just Motion or Final Cut?
No, Motion.
Oh, Motion, okay.
Yeah, Motion or Final Cut. Unless there's some sort of...
Either one, really.
Either one's not going to deal with the Canon raw, the metadata issues. So that's not even what I think is causing the crashing. I did the math, and a CR2 file, this is a raw Canon file, could be anywhere from 20 megabytes to 40 megabytes. And then if you do dual dual ISO RAW, you can get up to 90 megabytes. 90 megabytes a frame if you're like on a Canon 5D Mark IV. So let's just take 30 megabytes per image as just kind of a mean file size. And then let's say you have 10 seconds of, you want a 10-second time lapse you want to do. Well, that's 300 frames. So 300 times 30, you're talking about 9,000 megabytes divided by 1,000, roughly, and getting down to gigabytes. Now you're talking 9 gigabytes of material that has to be loaded into RAM. I don't know what system is going to allow you to have any sort of real-time playback with that level of data that has to be stuffed into RAM. So all that to say, you really should be using JPEGs when doing time-lapse. And if you have to adjust them in Photoshop, or there's a program called Timelapse LR that works really great with After Effects. I know, I'm bringing up After Effects because you can adjust all the metadata and what have you, and then spit it out. And that if you need a complete raw pipeline, you're not going to be able to do it with Apple Pro apps. You have to use Adobe apps and Adobe plugins like Lightroom or for whatever I said that was. Yes, Timelapse LR.
LR Timelapse. Yeah.
Yes, LR Timelapse. Then you'll be able to do that full Timelapse raw workflow, but it's just not possible in Apple Pro. So that was a kind of a long-winded answer, but I think I really want to give people a proper context for, working with raw images in these, as time-lapse sequences. All right. Yeah, it's time for you to answer the next question, Mark.
Yeah, I'll answer a couple that are posted here and then do a little demo thing.
Sure.
I'm just backing up a little bit here. So Jeff Taylor said, speaking of motion, I'm trying to hire a designer for some animation for a project. I keep getting pushback that they want to use Final Effects instead. And Jeff, I think you mean After Effects. And that's understandable. After Effects has a much bigger installed base, is much better known among people who do animation, motion graphics, visual effects for a living. If that's what they do, they're going to be using After Effects. I mean, that's just the reality of the marketplace. Motion is very powerful. I love it. I've been using it since it came out 15 years ago. But most of the people who use motion are people who are in the Final Cut community, because even though you can use it as a standalone to do a ton of stuff, it's better known because it's for people who use Final Cut because it's so well integrated with Final Cut. So if you're trying to hire a designer and you're only finding people at After Effects, you need to find folks who do who are good at motion, and there are plenty of people out there who do that, who can use motion. But you're going to find more people in general who are using After Effects. There are some tools that allow you to move back and forth between them, but it's difficult to get everything. And if you really want a motion project because you want to publish it to Final Cut, then you want to design in motion. If you're asking for a designer to do some animation where all you need is the movie rendered out with an alpha channel to put over top of video or something, fine, have them use After Effects if they want to do that. That's totally fine. There's a question about writing or help writing next round of Apple Pro app spokes. We can't really address that. Sorry, nothing we can say about that. ATEM training, great. How do we make a still image out of a flag wave in the wind in motion? You're asking about warping and really warping in 3D, and there's nothing native to motion that can do that. There are some wave filters, bulge filters, but they're all 2D and they won't look good. There used to be a great plugin. Zaxworks used to make a flag plugin. I don't know if they do anymore that I've used. It was really great, Zaxworks. You could check that out. But basically need some kind of plugin if you want to do a realistic flag wave in motion. Tips for B-roll editing was Akash Dash asked that, and actually post a link in the if you scroll down to our intro. Steve does a great getting started with Final Cut Pro 10 series of 10 short videos that's free. That's linked directly on Apple's website. And if you just need a basic intro to how to understand the UI, and cutting in B-roll is sort of in that realm of basics of understanding Final Cut, I'd highly recommend working through those first. And if you need more, obviously we do tutorials for a living. So Steve has a great core training that will go into more depth about how to work with B-roll. Tom, 32 versions of Final Cut. It's amazing. There's been 32 versions of Final Cut since it came out. Of course, some of those are bug fix versions, but we'll take it. That's great. Will you guys ever do FX Plug development tutorials? We can talk about that. I mean, we have a workflow extension that we've done But right now, you really have to be invited to participate in order to create a workflow extension. You can't just do it. So if and when that changes, we'll certainly look at that.
Well, I think also he's referring to FX Plug, which is kind of the engine that drives motions effects, effects.
Yeah.
So I think maybe, and this might be a good time to ask you all, and please post your comments in the chat. We are thinking about maybe doing updating and doing a rigging and publishing tutorial where we show you like all of the essentially the mechanics of working with widgets and pop-up menus and checkboxes and the things that you do to actually build an interface for Final Cut Pro 10. Right now we have a tutorial that's pretty old. It's going back 9 years, but we're looking at maybe updating it to show you kind of how to do it. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah.
And doesn't have anything to do with the FX Plug. All the rigging and publishing we do and all the plugins that we create are created directly in Motion. We're not using the FX Plug architecture to do that. Is there a workaround for adding descriptors or sections for rigging parameters? So this is actually directly related. When you are rigging and publishing and you've got a lot of parameters, is there a way to separate and organize them? The answer is currently there isn't. You need to use a workaround like publishing a pop-up menu and just filling it with dashes or using emojis or things like that in order to create separate sections. Now, if you're doing FX Plug, you can do a little bit more than that, but within Motion directly, there's not. Jeff Taylor also asked, can you Final Effects export to Motion? I think he means can After Effects export to Motion, and no, it cannot. Have you seen Final Cut freezing in Catalina? I have not. I've been on Catalina for, 6 months, and I know Steve's had an issue with his Synology server. I'm connected to a Promise RAID directly. I've had no problems with Catalina. It's been rock solid for me. I have to say, it's been really excellent.
Awesome. So Mira Clayton's asking, is anything to say about workflow for a project cut in Final Cut that I want to finish and resolve, primarily for VFX? My question to that is you would do a standard what's called VFX workflow. I wouldn't send your entire sequence over to resolve. That's unnecessary. You just pick the shots that need visual effects work and give them the highest resolution, what I call plates possible. So if they're going to be doing, let's say you have a building that's this building is going to blow up, or whatever, you got the shot of the building, well, give them the highest resolution, give them the 4K, ProRes 4444, and give that to them, let them build the effects, and then you bring that back and then cut that into your project. That's typically how it's done. VFX houses don't need every shot. They just need the shots that they're working on relative to the project. So that's what I would do. And what do you think, Mark?
I agree. I mean, if you're doing color correction, you can, of course, you can send XML to resolve from Final Cut. It works great. Yeah. There's some caveats about effects and speed ramps and titles and things like that. But for basic shots, you can send the whole thing to resolve and color correct. But if you're just doing a single shot, I agree with you completely. Just work with that particular clip. Yeah. Hey, there's a really great question here from George Caldor Racing. I'm sorry if I'm not saying that right. Yeah. Hi guys, love your work and have learned loads. Is there a shortcut or a way of sending a clip to the back end of the timeline without having to drag it manually? Absolutely. So let me just show you this real quick. I just have a timeline here with a bunch of clips. And let's say this clip here, I want to send to the end of the timeline. Actually, let me close my effects browser here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to press Shift F, which will reveal that clip in the browser. And then I'm going to press E, which will throw it at the end. And then I do need to select it and delete the original one. Okay, which you don't actually need to click on the mouse, but just Shift F to reveal in browser. The copy it reveals in the browser will have the same in and out points, and E as an append edit will throw that clip to the end. So you don't need to drag it. So if you're zoomed in really close, you can do that and not worry about zooming out to see it.
All right, so Twisted Eye, you're asking about title in the background when a man walks in front of it. Well, that's coming up. Mark's going to demo that for you, so hang tight on that. Let's see. There's a couple of other questions here. It sounds like a lot of you want to see the rigging and publishing tutorial. Awesome. That's great. Okay. Some people are having freezing on their drives. It seems to be a mixed bag of what's working, what's freezing, what not. Catalina. I have my own issues with it, but like FilmStat's asking, I try to drag from the Finder, the browser, but I get the message, no source space. That might be a function of how your library is set up. I check, first I'd select your library, go to your library preferences and see how is it set up. Is it actually writing to a drive that actually has space? By the way, we do have a support system at Ripple Training. If you do support at rippletraining.com, we have a whole ticketing system. Some of these questions we just can't possibly answer in a show like this. So if you're experiencing things, we might be able to provide some insight. You're welcome to use that. All right. I think we should jump, while you monitor these questions, they maybe jump into another tip, Mark.
Sure. What's the one you mentioned that I was going to do?
Oh, the walking in front of the text, revealing the text. You showed.
Oh, yeah. So let's.
Did you want to do that right? Do you want to do that? Do that now. That'd be a good one, dude.
Sure. I'll do that now. So let me switch to my Final Cut here. So they basically wanted to know how to do something like this. So I've got a shot of myself walking and revealing some text, and I was looking for a more interesting shot, but I found this. And this shot, by the way, this shot is really, the original shot looks like this. I had to blow it up 300% to get close enough to be interesting, but that's why it looks a little blurry, because it's blown up 300%, but to do this demo. So the question is, how do you do this, right? How do you make basically a moving object to reveal something else? Let me zoom in. There's several ways to do this, but they all involve what's called rotoscoping, which means animating a mask. And the way I'm going to show you here is by doing it directly to the title. So I have this title starting right where I want to start seeing it being revealed behind me, where that O, see if I move back a frame, it's going to be completely covered. So I want it to start here. And what I'm going to do is first put it in a compound clip. And the reason I'm putting it in a compound clip is because it gets around the issue of when I click on it, I accidentally select the text instead of the mask. So it just makes it easier to work with. So I'm going to hit Option G. Boy, I'm having trouble today. Option G to make a compound clip. And then I'm going to go into the effects browser, and in the mask category, I'm going to add a draw mask to it. Okay? And then I'm going to zoom in close. Actually, I'll draw a rough mask first. I'm just going to add like 1, 2, 3, 4 points and draw a little mask around it. And then I want to zoom in on this thing. So I'm going to Command plus a few times to zoom in closer so I can see my work. And there I've got my first frame on my mask. And you want to do as few points as possible. They'll still let you get a good amount of sort of detail here. So with that in place, I'm also going to add a little bit of feathering to that mask, just so it's a little bit softer, just 1 or 2 pixels. And I'm going to click the, for the control points, I'm going to click the keyframe button so that when I change those control points, the first ones I made will stay where they are. If you want to be able to move the whole mask, you could also keyframe position or rotation to give you more flexibility. I don't really need that here. So now the process, I'm going to move basically 1 frame at a time. And don't worry, I'm not going to do the whole thing here. I'll just do a couple to show you and then move each of these points in order to start to reveal the title. And I'll go another frame and you're like, oh, isn't there an easier way? And the answer is no, not really. I mean, you can there's some techniques for doing this that will speed up the workflow. But this is basically what you need to do is this animated mask or rotoscoping in order to reveal the title. So I'll just do maybe 3 frames there. And now if I back up, you can see I'm starting to reveal that title, okay? Not just a couple of frames. Didn't take long. So if I go back to the original one here and Shift Z just to see the whole thing, that maybe took 10 minutes to do across there. And once you're done, you can change the text and things because the mask is the mask. It will mask whatever's in there. You can see the mask there. I've just selected so you can see how the mask moves along to reveal the title. And that's the basic idea. Whenever you see that done, they either animated a mask on the text, or you can also duplicate the video and you can mask out the person so they're on top and they're isolated. That's another option, but I just did it directly on the text in this case. You could do it either way. So hopefully that's one way. There's many ways, but that's one way. Do the Chris Maddox says, do the whole thing. And Chris, you must really be bored. Do the whole thing.
Right. All right. This is great. That's awesome. Let's see here. All right. So there's some questions. These are really great questions. So ones we want to go back, see if we missed anybody. Matt Sobel asked, "Can you move?" Okay, maybe that's related to another question there. William White, any advice for sharing errors? Compressor kit X domain error 1 when creating DVD or sharing to a hard drive. So it sounds like, William, it's not allowing you to create your DVD as a hard drive. I mean, that's a question. Maybe you support a Ripple training. That's a little bit of a rabbit hole question. So go ahead and post it there, and we'll get to it, within a few days. Okay. Let's see. All right. Let's jump over, and then are there any other questions you want to answer here, Mark? Or go into another demo?
Oh, I just want to mention, Jacob was asking, how do you hide the menu bar when your name and
I
date
know
of time is
I
on
posted
that?
Bartender. I gave him a link. Yeah.
Bartender, yeah. Bartender's awesome. Highly recommend Bartender.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't say you posted that.
So Jeff's asking Travis to create an advanced macros package for the ATEM.
That's a rabbit hole.
Wow. Yeah, that's a rabbit hole, but yeah, that might be fun. He'd learn a lot. I mean, yeah, Travis is our resident ATEM expert right now, so he's great. All right. Let's jump over to Final Cut. I'm going to answer some more questions from our spreadsheet. Just so you know, when we do these, we try to get Google surveys out to everyone to put your questions ahead of time. That way we can rehearse them, and we're not floundering in front of you live when we're trying to do the steps.
Floundering's fun.
Floundering. So there's one question. It's a really long question, but it's a long question regarding picture-in-picture effects and compound clips, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's just too long. But basically, he wants to create a template, a compound clip template with picture-in-picture where they, like, two picture-in-pictures dissolve into each other, and then he can reuse that compound clip. That's the essence of what he wants to do. So there's a lot of ways to do that in Final Cut. I'm going to show you my method. I'm sure, other people find other ways to do it, but this is the way I would do it. I'm going to jump into my Justine clip here. All right, so I'll zoom out Justine there, and what I want to do is I want to cut to a picture-in-picture. Now I'm going to find a clip in my library that I want to use, and she's got this. She's talking about the 361X bullet time feature, where the invisible selfie stick. So the first thing I want to do is I want to add this as a connected clip to the time. This, by the way, this is 10 seconds long. If you're going to make a template, you should decide ahead of time, well, your template should be a defined length. This shouldn't be just open-ended. So in this case, I would say this template I'm going to make is a 10-second long as defined by this range here. So I'm just going to press Q to connect it. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to zoom in to the connected clip. So I have this connected clip here. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the transforms, and I'm going to go ahead and move this over here to set that. Let's say that's something I want right there. And now what I want to do is I want to create some. I don't just want it to cut on. I want it to fade. I'm going to turn off the transforms for a minute and hit Control V, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. And what I'm going to do is I recommend using these fade handles rather than dissolves, because when you do a copy and paste attributes, it's not going to recognize the dissolves. That's why I recommend you do it this way. So I'm going to set this to roughly 1 second on either side of the compound. Of the clip, and I'll go ahead and close this. So now Control V. Now I have the picture-in-picture fading up. Before I go any further, next thing I want to do is select the clip, Command C to copy it, and that's very important because you want to copy its attributes, its position in the frame and its scale, and also those fades that I just created. So now what he wants to do is I want to cross dissolve to another clip in the exact same spot. So at this point, I'm going to set an in point, and then down arrow, go to the out point, and I'm going to go to the next clip. This clip here is the next clip I want to dissolve to. I'm just going to press Q, and what that does is it places it there, and now of course it's the wrong size, which is why I copied this bottom clip. So I can then select this clip, and then I can go up and I can choose a paste attribute, Shift Command V, and then it's going to position, scale, and most important, the compositing, which is those fades. So I'm going to click paste, and now what you're going to see is that I've got two clips, and then it crossfades to that other clip in the exact same position. By the way, I'm going to bring her audio down here. I'm going to turn off her audio altogether because it's unnecessary. I'm using that. And so now it's just like, okay, so you can see what I did there. So I have this really nice cross dissolve of the PIP effect. Now he wants to create a template out of it. So at this point, this is when I would create the template. After I'd set it up. I wouldn't create the template in the browser. I would create it here now that I could see everything. That's why I do it in the timeline first. And then I would select these clips, press Option G, and then call this PIP-1, and I'll save that into the event. And now it's a picture-in-picture. And now your template, the template is right here, okay? Now, a couple of things about this template. One is, if I put it in the timeline right now, I can, there it is, and I step into this compound clip, and if I change anything inside this container, the problem is it's going to change this one too. And we really don't want that. This has to be a complete separate instance from this if I want to change the video in here. So I have two ways to deal with this. One way would be to, if I've already added it to the timeline, I would want to go to the clip menu and change this to reference new parent clip. And it would, of course, create a brand new compound clip. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to delete that because there's another way to do this. And you don't need to do that if you make a copy of the compound clip in the browser first. So for example, there's it says PIP1. If I duplicate this clip, Command D, I now have a duplicate of it, and that says PIP1 copy. I'll change this to PIP. If you duplicate the compound clip in the browser, because it's a duplicate, it is its own new reference clip now. So when I put it in here, I can now change this clip. I can step in here, and I can change these clips, and it's not going to affect the original clip. So my point is then duplicate your template, and so that you have it, and then you can put it somewhere else, and just make as many duplicates as you need before adding them to the timeline. And then at this point, you can then jump in. You could then jump into and then you could start replacing. Now again, you have the same issue. I can't just go and replace these. I have to select the clip, copy. So I'm copying the attributes. Then I'm going to get another clip, maybe right there, and I'm going to select that, and I'm going to drop that in there. I'm going to say replace from start. Oops, what happened? Drop that in there. Replace from start. So I've replaced it, but again, because there's attributes issues, and I have to go back in and then paste the attributes for that. And now it's in the right place, and I'm going to have to do the same thing for this clip. I'm going to have to replace it and then paste attributes. And then if I go out here, you can see that there's that first clip's different, but the second clip's the same. But bottom line is, that is how I would templatize this type of thing if I didn't want to create the stacks in the timeline each time. All right, so that's my answer to that question. And by the way, Chris Fenwick, thank you for that super chat. That's freaking awesome. Thank you super much. Super much for the super chat. All right, Mark, you still there? What happened to Mark? Yep. So just keep me live for now, and we'll try to figure out. Maybe you can try to bring him back on.
I'm here. I'm here. I'm sorry.
What did you go walk? Did you go walk the dog or something?
No, I had it. So somebody was at the. Someone was at the door. Yeah, I'm here. All good. All good.
All right. There's a couple of super chat questions that came in that I want to address. Big Water, thank you for that chat. That's what I say. Yakinbo. I was like, or is the N silent? The N must be silent. It's Yakbo. Anyway, thanks for the $10 super chat. And then Cody has a question. Compressors sometimes would not bounce out the file, causing me to restart the computer. What could cause this? Is it a RAM or hard drive issue? When you say bounce out, I don't know what your workflow is. Are you sending the clip from Final Cut to Compressor and then exporting, or are you just dragging a file into Compressor and exporting from that single file? And then what kind of file is it? So I need just a little bit more information. Is it a ProRes file? Is it some weird, like, I don't know, codec, old codec thing? Maybe it's H.2.6, whatever. I don't know what it is. What is it? And how big is the file? And then how are you actually getting into Compressor? Just give me a little bit more info. It's hard for me to say if it's RAM or hard drive, but yeah. All right. Any other questions here? We're going through these.
So I see there's a motion question I can answer here.
Yeah.
In motion, it says, is motion, is there a similar way to paste attributes between each layer object? For instance, is it possible to copy paste animation keyframes between layers? Absolutely. You can copy paste keyframes between layers, between groups. You can option drag behaviors or filters. I mean, motion's super easy to do that kind of stuff with.
Yeah.
Thank you, Barry Stone. I could answer another one of our earlier ones. It's a pretty simple one.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to switch. It was a question about, let me just read it real quick. When putting a JPEG photo into a video interview timeline, the JPEG does not fill the full screen. How do I adjust it so I don't have any of the video on the right and left of the margins? So let me just show you an example of this. So here's an example of a clip, and it's not over video. I mean, I could put it over video. So I guess they're asking something like this. Hey, I put this clip on top of video, and now I see the video underneath it. Like, how do you deal with that? So some of you might know this, but some of you may not. So I think it's worth going through quickly. By default, when you bring in an image into Final Cut, it will automatically scale that image down to fit within the frame completely, so you can see the entire image. So this image doesn't match the aspect ratio of my HD timeline. It's skinnier, but we get to see the whole thing. If you wanted to fill the frame in the video inspector, under the Spatial Conform section, you can see it set to fit by default. So if we choose fill, it will scale it up to fill the entire frame, okay? So that's one option. Now, because it did that, we've got a little extra cutoff on the top and bottom. So in the transform controls for Y, you can then adjust it a little bit in order to reframe it. That's one option. Another option is to choose none, and then it will be its original size, which may be really big, or in this case, it's a pretty small picture, and then you could scale it up manually and reposition it manually to do exactly what you want. So it completely either obscures what's behind it or gets rid of any black. Here's another example of, a shot from it might be a computer, I'm sorry, an iPhone or something like that, or a vertical shot video. It's the same thing. If I choose fill instead here, it completely fills the screen. And then I would need to choose the framing I would want to find on it because, it's much taller than it is wide. The last thing you can do is we have a plugin and part of our Ripple Tools Complete that will deal with vertical video by showing a blurred version on each side. So you can just add the vertical video plugin from Ripple Tools Complete and address that. So just a quick mention on how to deal with stills in video.
Okay, so let's go back up and looking. There's some questions we missed. I'd like to kind of see if we can get through some of them really quickly. Let's see, going back up. So Yakmo, you asked a question earlier, and I can't find it. So if you could post it, I'd be more than happy to answer it for you. So the thing is these we have the slow mode turned on the chat, but still a lot of questions come in, and they just kind of keep going up and up and up, and it's like I don't know what happened to them. So let's see. Izzy Diaz, thank you. By the way, Izzy, I see you post a lot on our under 60. Really appreciate you watching our stuff, so thank you. Why is syncing clips manually different from using the FCP 10 option? What does FCP do to make them align, whereas I can't manually? Well, you should be able to manually sync them if you have a sync point. Usually it could be a clap or some loud noise that you sync with the audio. that's all Final Cut's doing when it's doing audio syncing. It's looking at the waveform. It's trying to find audio synchronization points using the amplitude of the waveform. So if you don't have any sync points, and you've got to have to line up the audio, and if you have a pair of headphones, even if you don't have a sync point, you can nudge the clip into place listening until you get that echoey. That's hard to describe. But you can hear when the clips are pretty much aligned. So it is possible to sync clips even without a clapper. Or some sort of sync pop. You just got to, have headphones. You got to be listening. You can be nudging the clip, but you can do it. It just takes a little bit of time. But if your answer is like, what's more accurate? Well, Final Cut's doing essentially the same thing. You're doing manually what it's doing by an algorithm. Okay. All right. Jersey soundtrack. I'm trying to use Cloner to eliminate image from a video clip. The image is against a background that has multiple colors. Trying to pick a pixel offset from area. Yeah, Jerry. I'm assuming the Cloner is hard because it's looking. If you have a lot of busyness, like rocks or things where you it's going to be very challenging to find a clone offset. In which case, you might want to, at that point, if you really have to clone it out. I hate mentioning, but almost have to go in and paint those frames out manually. I don't know of a plugin that will just do a really good job. There's always going to be blurring and offset issues, and if you really need a really clean job, then often you have to bring it into Fusion or After Effects and it's painstakingly paint it out. I mean, I think because After Effects even has an onion skin feature where it onion skins one layer on the top, so you can actually see the pixels you're painting from relative to the pixels you're painting on. That's really what you need, because a clone is only going to do so far. Okay. Brad Walker, can you batch a weekly video to Facebook, YouTube, and other social media from Compressor from one job, or you do need to upload? Okay, couple things, Brad. One is Facebook no longer allows you to upload directly to its platform. They used to have that, but now you have to spit out a movie and upload to Facebook manually. For whatever reason, Facebook, I don't know, they made some sort of a security issue. They don't like direct act. They disallow that from Final Cut or Compressor now. You have to export it, drop it in manually. But not true with YouTube or Vimeo. You can batch all of that stuff up to both of those platforms. All right. All right.
See if I got one here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Tom Mellon was asking, how do you delete plugins that cause Final Cut Pro 10 to crash? I'm going to give you a two-part answer. First of all, if the plugin is from FX Factory, which is a platform that we use to distribute some of our plugins, then it's pretty easy because you just launch FX Factory and you can disable individual plugins directly within the FX Factory application. If it's not from FX Factory, you just remove either delete it or remove it from its location, and all plugins are located in the user movie folder in the motion templates folder. So you go to your user account or home, to movies, to motion templates, and then if it's a title, it'll be in the titles folder, transition in the transition folder, or a generator or an effect. You go to the right folder, locate the folder that plugin's in, and then if you don't want to delete the plugin, you just drag that folder out of that motion templates master folder, and it won't show up in Final Cut anymore. You don't even need to quit and restart Final Cut. Just take it out. It'll be gone.
All right. I want to get back to Yakbo's question because he posted. I appreciate. Thanks. All right. He says, a couple of upgrades back, my libraries would, with the exception of 2, upgrade no problem. What was up with the other 2? When you say upgrade and they won't upgrade.
I think I know what he's saying.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that he has. Yeah, I think he probably has some libraries from 10.0.8 before the library model changed.
Right.
Where you had separate events and libraries, and those cannot be upgraded with a current version of Final Cut. The only way to upgrade those really old libraries is with a version of Final Cut that came out immediately after that. I think it's 10.1. Somebody, Tom or Chris, will probably chime in here. You have to get that old version of Final Cut, upgrade them, update. It's really updating. You're updating those libraries with that old version of Final Cut, and then you can take that version of the updated and update it again with the newest version of Final Cut. That's the only way to do it. That version exists. There's a support article. I'll see if I can find it and post it here while Steve's answering a question that shows you where you can get that old version of Final Cut. I believe that's what he's talking about. Please post it. That's not right.
Jersey soundtrack. We did update the the ATEM mini tutorial that Travis did. a couple of weeks ago. It's already in your library. If you own it, it's already in your library. We've already updated it with the pro stuff, so you're already set. Do you guys know a good tracker that can allow me to substitute a background where there is a, substitute a background, there is a moving talent in front. Substitute a background. Well, I don't know how you extract the foreground subject that's moving like a person from its background without rotoscoping. So I don't even know how you do that. That's a rotoscoping issue. That's not a tracking issue, because you still have to separate the person and their background. They have to be physically separated as layers. Yeah. All right.
Jeff Taylor asked if we are using the audio delay feature added to the ATEM.
Right. So Jeff asked about the audio delay feature to ATEM. The ATEM switcher, when it first came out, it had when you were using I believe the 1/8 inch mini jack mic inputs, there would be an offset, a delay. People would be like a kung fu movie. Well, apparently Blackmagic has a firmware update that allows you to use the ATEM software control to adjust the amount of offset so you can correct for that. So the answer to that question, Jeff, is no. We have not tried it because we don't actually connect to the audio ATEM that way. All of our audio sources go through our cameras, and the audio goes through HDMI, and we feed our sources on the ATEM over HDMI. We do not use separate mic inputs on the ATEM. So that's one of the reasons why we haven't tested it. It's just not our workflow. All right, thanks. All right, so let's answer a few more questions, Mark, and then I think we could wrap it up here pretty quick here. Did Mark go walk his dog again?
No, we're not hearing Mark.
All right.
Sorry, I'm muting my mic when you're talking.
He doesn't he doesn't like my voice anymore. It's annoying him.
No, I can hear you. You just can't hear me.
All right.
I can hear you. I love hearing your voice. It's very soothing.
All right. Maybe
I'm looking through the questions we had asked here.
Yeah.
Some takes too long to demo. A lot of these. How to put text on a wall. We did that one. Yeah. It's possible to create an object. We did that one. Optimum. That was you were doing that. Okay. There's one that has a push on a video that makes text come in the side. That was asked. It's just too long to demo that, but it's pretty easy to do in Motion.
There's
or in
one.
Final Cut.
Someone's asking: is in Final Cut 7 there was a way to superimpose a clip over one in the timeline? Well, it depends on what you mean by superimpose. Final Cut 7 had an actual overwrite. If you drag your clip, I can't believe it. If you drag your clip from the viewer into the source window, what is it? Record window, whatever that monitor is on the view. The monitor on the right, you have an overlay. It says superimpose. All that does is it puts a clip over another clip. That's all it does. And in Final Cut, that's just a connected clip. That's a superimposed clip. Now, if you mean compositing, that's simply selecting the clip and then using one of the blend modes. So superimposing in Final Cut 10 is simply a connected clip. That's all it is.
So, and if Steve, I wanted to say, if they are asking, is there a way to edit a clip on top of another so it matches the range of that clip?
Right.
Yes, you can just set a range on that clip first, like with X, and then do a Q, and it will exactly match the range. And if they're asking if they want to add I thought maybe it was a question about a blend mode, superimpose a clip on top of another. Once you put a clip on top of another, you can apply any blend mode that you want that was available in Final Cut 7. Those are all available in Final Cut 10 as well.
Right. Okay, I actually, let's see. There's actually one other thing I wanted to show as a demo that I think is kind of relevant to, like, what we're all stuck inside and doing everything virtually. It's been really popular on the web now, like virtual choruses, doing, singing. You got like 50 like picture-in-pictures, right? And, you have choruses coming out. I just want to quickly answer that question. I don't have to go too deep, but I can show you quickly. That was a question that came in last night, and I just thought it might be interesting to quickly look at how I set this up. So here I have a look. I didn't have this is Mark and I and Justine and Jenna, and what I did was let's just assume for a second this is your chorus. We're all singing whatever, and we're all in sync. We've been sung, and the question was like, I want to bring like maybe a quartet like full screen, or maybe I want to bring up one singer full screen and then go back to full screen like this. Well, you could do that. And visually I made this easy because I put like this quadrant in different colors. So you can see that these would be, obviously these would be different clips, but I'm using the same 4 all over again. So one of the things that I would recommend if you're going to do this type of work is, if you know this is your quartet that you're going to zoom up, make sure that they are all like together in the timeline. So they're like right next, they're literally stacked on top of you. You don't want, you know, one quartet member up here and one quartet member down there. That's going to be a nightmare. I would just organize them so they're all together. Then what I would do is I would select all of these clips like this, and then I would Option G, and I would a quartet, and I would turn them into a compound clip. And because this is on the bottom, then the other thing, because I need this on the top, because if I'm gonna zoom up on them, they actually have to be above the other layers. So shift drag them. So now, and by the way, now I could split this. So I can say I can Command B that and Command B that here. Select this Command B. And so this section here, I would probably animate. I'm not going to animate it, but you can see now if I go into the inspector, if I start, you know, I could start scaling this and positioning it. You can see that I can keyframe this to just come up as a separate item and then go back. So that's how I do it, is I compound clip it, and then I would split it, and then I would animate this particular compound clip to go full screen. I'd reposition it. So I'm not going to do that. I just kind of show you what my thinking would be on how to do something like this. In fact, let me just move it here. Just move this like that and scale this up. So I get this kind of like in my final position. And then I would keyframe this to come up and then go down. All right. So that was my quick answer. I wanted to answer that question that came in last night. All right. Back to you, Mark.
Good. I think we're set here.
All right.
I think that was great.
All right. So, by the way, thank you for those of you who have been watching all of our 60-second quick tips. We really appreciate you letting us know. I mean, they take a lot of work to produce. They have to be tightly scripted. And, you know, if you could just get the word out about them, share them, that'll be really, really helpful. I know this is kind of a dog days of summer. We're all stuck inside. It's hot. We're kind of grumpy. You know, it's like, I want to go to the beach or whatever. It's like, we're just all in this. I know I'm in a weird funk right now. It's just I want to get out. And anyway, I won't bore you with that. But bottom line is that, you know, if you like these, please share them. Let people know about them. Mark and I are going to continue creating them. And if you have any specific ideas that you'd like to see something, please let us know. We want to keep them to a minute. There have been requests to make them 2 minutes. That we could do that, I guess, in some, but we like the idea of like bite-sized. Like, here's 60 seconds. You can go back and rewatch them. That was the idea. We cut out all the fluff, all of this talking stuff, and we just get right to the meat. All right. Anything else, Mark?
I don't think so. That was awesome. It was really fun to do.
Yep.
We don't currently have our next one scheduled, but we'll let you guys know when we're doing it again, because we love doing these. And
Yep.
Thank you very much for taking an hour out of your day and joining us, and hopefully found it useful. And we'll see you guys again soon, for sure. Everybody stay safe and be well.